We made it. We made it. We made it. Hello, everybody.
Against all odds.
And my apologies to those that I thought I made this a taping show that Helen and I were going to do. And I saw it was alive, so I didn't want to change things up. But as we get more people coming in, welcome to this Saturday install of Supreme Court Part 2, Upside Down Thinking.
We have to be especially careful of what we really want to say now since it's live. I don't want to get you in trouble with YouTube. But, you know, hide my true feelings.
Anyway, yeah. So Helen was in my dream class, and we've been trying to get this second part done for a long time, except that Keith's been in and out of hospital. So we are going to talk about two members. We talked about two members before. We're going to talk about two more members of the Supreme Court today. Your friend and mine, Chucky Thomas, and Sonia Sotomayor. We're going to talk about them, and then we're going to do some card throws. So.
Okay. Well, thank you, Aley, for doing this, for organizing it, for holding my hand through when, where, who. But I did do my homework. I always do my homework. I'm a total kiss up.
And she did it months ago, or weeks ago at the very least. So
yeah, so it's going to be a miracle if I can decipher my handwriting. It's been so long since I looked at it. But anyway.
No, so we've had quite the week on the Supreme Court. It's kind almost totally disturbing, the reaction. Some of the psychics were saying last night or this morning. I was listening to Mel and Linda G talk about the fact that they think the four members of SCOTUS that are the most conservative have already met with Trump, and that's not legal, and the Federalist Society. This is their psychic impression now for entertainment purposes only. And that they planned this whole thing the way they were going to handle it. And so we have to hope that Supreme Court Judge Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett, who's leaning more towards the women, but who knows, because she's not easy to figure out, will be able to. Okay. So Helen is loud and I'm too low. All right. Thank you for letting us know. I'll try to fix my volume.
I don't have mine very. It's not even halfway turned up. How's that? I'll whisper.
Oh well, maybe that just carries. Yeah. Yes, I know, Craig. Absolutely, it is sickening how they kiss up to Trump. But this is something that was intuited by the psychics, not necessarily gospel truth. Because if it had been known that they met, that would have been a problem, I'm sure. But yeah,
this is just gut feeling. I sometimes don't know. Forgive me for saying this. I sometimes don't know what's real and what isn't real. Like what's common knowledge and what's just how I'm sensing it. I sometimes don't know. And I thought it was a given that chunk of the Supreme Court is 100%. Entertainment purposes only, corrupted 100%, and has been since before they were chosen, groomed, if I can use that word, by the Federalist Society, put on the list, handpicked, corrupted before they started, with an agenda in mind, Project 2025, and I just thought that was common knowledge.
Yeah, yep. I mean, it probably is. But it's also got to be totally against all the rules of any political system. The fact that they're even entertaining the idea, Keith said, it's ridiculous. What point would it be to have impeachment? This isn't supposed to go to the Supreme Court. This is supposed to be away from the Supreme Court. It's supposed to be handled through impeachment, and it should have been handled through impeachment. And so,
well, there's the constitutionally established process, the legal law of the land process, and there's their agenda.
Right.
And they have not, entertainment purposes only, allegedly.
Right.
They've never been following
No.
a process. Right. Yeah.
There's actually a videotaping of, isn't there something we saw, a documentary on the Federalist Society and how they groom their people and stuff?
There's a documentary called The Family.
Oh, that's
and it's not about Charlie Manson. That's a whole other thing. But it's based on a book. I actually have it right up here. You probably can't see it, but it's right off camera up here on another stack of books. And it's all about things like related to the Federalists, Opus Dei, the Heritage, the Powell Memo, all those guys. Yeah.
Sure. So when I was listening to them, they also said that they really did see that Thomas and Alito and maybe even Kavanaugh may be impeached if Biden wins and everything goes to the Democrats. And so it's just fascinating. And of course, it's just a prediction. It doesn't mean it will necessarily come true.
Well, look at Leonard Leo. Leonard Leo is the man with the most power that very few people know about. I would recommend Greg Olear's podcast, Prevail. If you scroll back a while, he did a huge thing on Leonard Leo. He's a very active member of Opus Dei. Now, what we're talking about is white Christian nationalists running the government. And they come in different flavors. There's the charismatics, there's the fundamentalists, there's the Pentecostals, there's the Catholics, believe it or not. There are even Orthodox Jewish fundamentalists. And at the core, they have the same goal, to get Jesus back here. That's what it's all about. And there's this maneuvering to get a patriarchal, theocratic government, and they've been working on it for a very, very long time. Look at the guy from Georgia the other day who accosted the president of Columbia University. Do you want Columbia University to be damned by God? He asks her this in the House of Representatives, the Education Committee, the House Committee on Education, and he's asking this woman who is a PhD, who is an economist and the president of a gigantic university, whether she's familiar with Genesis, where it says God will smite you if you don't support Israel, and the Bible should be the center of our decision making, is paraphrasing. This is mind-boggling. Completely.
It totally is. And we do have some reasonable people in the Supreme Court. There's about 3 of them at least. We have Ketanji Brown Jackson, we have Sonia Sotomayor, and we have Elena Kagan. And so unfortunately, for Helen, she picked the troublesome men on the one side, and I took the ladies on the other.
I got all the losers.
Got the losers. But I wanted to talk about Sonia Sotomayor today because 2 things.
Yeah.
Sonia Sotomayor is 69 years old, and she became she assumed office in 2009. And so she's been in office, 15 years.
Oh, she's ancient.
Oh, I know. But people have been calling for her to retire so they can replace her if things go bad. And I'm like, good God. I mean, Ruth and Scalia were in their 80s, weren't they, when they had to leave?
Oh, I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg was either 89, 90, 91. She was like on the verge, of her last decade.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to be 69, and I really don't need to have people say I need to step down.
I just turned 70 years young. Older but wiser, and it's a hell of a lot better than the alternative, I'll tell you what. It's ridiculous.
And they're very cogent people. So that was one thing they brought up. But when she was in the hearings this week, she said, Christ is a woman these days, Laura. Oh, my God, yes, absolutely. And we as women can stand up this time, and the men that support women, and change the world if we all decide to do it. But she said, if we do immunity for Trump, that we are killing democracy completely. It's gone. It's gone. And, you know, that's just to have somebody that's so brilliant, that's done so well in the Supreme Court and has a lot of really beautiful, she was appointed by Bill Clinton. No, I'm sorry, Barack Obama. She was preceded by David Souter, and David Souter was, I believe, a conservative.
He was a conservative, yeah.
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 And,
but they're extinct. They don't exist anymore.
I know. That's very true. Mm-hmm. She was born American lawyer and jurist. She was nominated by Barack. She's the third woman, the first non-white woman, Hispanic and Latina. She was born to Puerto Rican parents. And so she does represent a huge chunk of our identity here in the United States now. And so, just brilliant. She got her summa cum laude from Princeton and her Juris Doctor from Yale in 1979. And she worked as an assistant district attorney in New York and so on and so forth. But she was actually nominated to the Southern District of New York by George H.W. Bush, which really, this is how, she was probably not a conservative then, but he felt that her credentialing was good enough to put her in.
Well, you said Yale, correct? Didn't he go to Yale? So there's that, but it's not about color and gender as much as it's about life experience. If you can't relate to insecurity in housing or worrying where your next meal is coming from or having to put all your bills on your credit cards because you don't have enough money, if you can't relate to that, then we don't have people like that on our Supreme Court. We're not fully represented.
We aren't. Yeah, we aren't fully represented. And in a world of ancient white men who've been in power for forever and ever, we need these voices, and so many have said, and they're saying over and over again, women need to save us. We will be the saviors. And we are leaving that patriarchy and moving into the matriarchy, but it's a process. So
we're moving in the age of Aquarius, away from Capricorn, and now I've just used up anything I know about astrology. That's the only thing I know.
You could probably sing the Fifth Dimension song.
Yes, I could. I do, I know it. But I'll spare everybody that pain.
I do want to say hello to those who have come in. Janet's here, and Karen and Craig, and Sin is here, and Terry Renner. Thank you, Gigi, Tammy, Amanda. Thanks for being here. Sherry's here. The thumbnail. Isn't that a great thumbnail? I took the picture of the Supreme Court and put it up upside down because that's what we're dealing with.
Did you do a thumbnail for the show?
I did, of the Supreme Court upside down.
Oh, hello. So you put a little advert. Okay.
They had upside down thinking.
Day late, $1 short.
Helen, I sprung a lot of things on you in the last 24 hours, so you.
My head's just spinning.
So I want to tell you a little bit more about Sonia before you move into making us sick to our stomachs by Clarence.
Oh, it's going to be sticking right about here. Okay.
Yeah. Sotomayor, since she's been in the Supreme Court, has been identified with concerns for the rights of criminal defendants and the criminal justice system, and is known for her impassioned dissents on the issues of race and ethnic identity. And yes, she's very vocal in that way. And I just, with the others that are with her now, it's almost like there's a really tight-knit sorority, and they're wonderful the way they work together, especially considering that we lost Ruthie, who really took care of so much of this. But it's taking 3 people now to do the work of one, if you think about it,
Yeah.
Hi, Valerie. It's nice to see you. So it talks about her. I won't bore you with lots and lots of details, but she was raised a Catholic as a Puerto Rican. She calls herself a New Yorkan. I love that.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
She lived in South Bronx, so she lived a really difficult life. Her relative proximity to Yankee Stadium led her to be a fan of the New York Yankees, if you're into that sort of thing. But she reflected in 1998, I was going to college and I was going to become an attorney. And I knew that when I was 10, because she decided to be a judge after watching, get ready for it, Perry Mason.
Oh, good for
And
her.
we all grew up with Perry Mason.
She is too old.
Not in my book.
Oh, no, it's great. Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
it is great. She let's see. She got married and divorced. They didn't have any children. She said the pressures of working life were an issue for them.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, and I can only imagine. She also found visible public service roles. She was connected to the party bosses that pick people for jobs in New York. She's been registered as an independent. Maybe that's why Bush kind of took over.
Oh, okay.
So she is probably more liberal than, maybe not, but I would say maybe more liberal than some of the Democrats. Mario Cuomo appointed her to become the board of the mortgage agency, which was very cool. She was also appointed by Ed Cook, or Koch. I don't know how you say his name. Is it Cook?
I think it's Koch, but what do I know?
As a founding member of the New York City Campaign Finance Board, she joined rulings that fined, audited, or reprimanded the mayoral campaigns of Cook or Koch, Dinkins, and Rudy Giuliani.
She went after all of them after they got her position. Ooh.
Maybe that's why they don't like her.
I love it.
Yeah. So she kept a low profile as a district court judge, but so let's see. In 2009, she would have been mid 50s. She probably would have been. Is that right? I'm terrible.
Wait, what year is this right now? 24? That's 13. No, 15 years, isn't it? 15 years?
Yeah.
So what is she now? 69? She would have been 54.
54. Okay. So mid 50s. Yeah. So
relatively youngish, right?
Youngish.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's New York talk.
Well, Wes, we are not really talking about either Biden or Trump at this point. We're talking more about SCOTUS.
Yeah.
And we are connected to the goddess energy, but,
Uh-oh. I guess it's really lucky right now that I can't see these comments because I have a piece of my mind I'd like to share.
Anyway.
Okay.
Let's see. She was notable rulings were her 2002 decision, Center for Reproductive Rights, her First Amendment right decision of Pappas versus Giuliani in 2002. She felt that the ruling in the New York Police Department could terminate from its desk job an employee who sent racist materials through the mail. Sotomayor argued that the First Amendment protected speech by the employee away from the office on his own time. She's done a lot, and she's done a lot of ascents. Is it ascents or descents? What do they? I think it's a descent, a DISSENT. Yeah, I think so.
Oh, dissenting. Yeah.
Yeah, descents. Hi, Moira. Nice to see you. Anyway, she is one of the first 4 women justices. We had Sarah Day O'Connor, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Elena Kagan, and Sotomayor. So
A pioneer. Yeah.
and more so later, but certainly the first Latino woman. And we don't have any Latino men that are representative on the Supreme Court at all. Just as you know, African American man in Justice Thomas. So.
Well, you have to be in good with the Federalist Society. Okay. And it's inherently racist and wealthy white male.
Sure.
And a part of the, people will say, oh, well, Clarence Thomas, what about him? Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know how to say this without offending people, but they always have to have somebody that they can point to as the exception, but I believe the exception proves the rule, Another similar appointee would be Amy COVID Bryant, who
You mean Amy Comey Barrett?
no, I don't. I do it intentionally. Remember Anita Bryant?
Yes.
Remember what a homophobe she was? And I'm sure you remember COVID. Okay, so yeah, the Handmaiden, you may be more familiar with that title. She also is the exception that proves the rule. And it's very cynical appointees, I think.
Well, I mean, if I think about it, I didn't watch all of these nomination hearings, but I certainly remember Clarence Thomas's hearing and Anita Hill and her not being at all. And she's a smart woman, well-educated woman, and she had valid complaints. And then the same thing happened with the Kavanaugh. With that, there was another woman who said, and it was almost as though it didn't really matter. And yet,
it didn't matter. Yeah.
No, it didn't matter.
In both cases, there were a number of other women, and I think I have it written down here somewhere, but we're talking in the tens of other women at least, with similar complaints who were not allowed. They knew about them, and in some of them had been deposed, and they weren't considered in public,
Right.
Just dismissed.
For both? For Thomas and... Oh, okay. Okay. I don't think we were ready for that yet when Thomas wasn't... so you're going to tell us more about Thomas, but was it the 70s? It was the 80s.
Yeah, it was in the 80s, and it was the whole Coke can pubic hair affair, and it was demeaning and meant to humiliate her. And it was this overt display of patriarchal hegemony. It's just disgusting. Yeah.
Right. So you can go ahead and tell us more, and we'll haul out the vomit bags. And
feel sorry for me. I had to read it and write it, which embeds it in your memory. I have a background for him, and I ordinarily wouldn't belabor it, except I think it's significant and it's important. So let's just get going here. So born in June of 48. What comes after Gemini? 23rd of June. What is he?
Cancer, I think. Cancer.
Oh boy, there's an ironic sign. He was born, now this is his background. I think this is so significant. He was born to a single mother in a wooden shack in this little place in the middle of nowhere, Georgia, a small community that was founded by freedmen in 1880. She spoke Gullah.
Oh, really?
Which is South Carolinian, usually offshore island. No, it's like an African dialect. It's a mixture of English and African. Don't any linguists in the group. I'm just doing this off the top of my head, but it's a distinct different language. It's not slang. It's not English. It's combined with English, but it's from slavery times. And that they were so isolated. One of those islands is where John Kennedy Jr. got married. Isn't that interesting? He was born in Georgia, but it's that coast,
Right.
Yeah, okay. So he was the second of 3 children. His father was a farm worker. His mother's parents were slaves.
Oh.
This is really important stuff, right?
Important stuff, yeah.
When his mother got pregnant with his older sister, because he was number 2, she was kicked out of her Christian church and school because, Christian. And she was ordered by her father to get married. And of course, they were divorced within 3 years. And the father of the children abandoned her. And he only ever saw his father once. Oh. His mother was a maid. She survived by being a maid in Savannah, and he stayed back with his aunt in Pinpoint, Georgia. His mother would try to come home on the weekends to visit her children, but then his aunt's house burnt down, and he and his brother went with his mother to live in Savannah in a one-room tenement room that had an outdoor toilet. So he had a rough upbringing.
Sounds like
the daughter stayed back with the aunt. His sister stayed back with the aunt in Georgia, and they got a new place to live. Anyway, his mother, let's see, she didn't do it entirely alone. She asked her father for help, and his wife didn't like the kids. And so who would have been his stepmother threatened their lives, and kicked them out. And so finally the children moved in with the grandparents, and they had toilets for the first time, indoor toilets, and regular meals for the first time in their lives. Wow. His grandparents were rich. They got rich from delivering coal and oil and ice. Wow. And they took him to NAACP meetings, and his grandfather, he often said, was the biggest influence in his life. And his grandfather was a Roman Catholic. So Thomas went to Roman Catholic schools. He became the first black boarding student. So he's got a pattern in his life, up from poverty, up from a generational history of slavery, up from an element of abuse and neglect. And then he becomes the token everywhere he goes. And that's got to have had an effect on him. The only library for black kids anywhere, he couldn't use the school library. The only available library was the Carnegie Library in the town, and he spent hours and hours there. His grandfather made him work in the summertime. When he was 10 years old, he was building buildings and farming in the heat, and he got no affection. His grandfather pushed education, but keep in mind, slavery, right? He was taught that segregation was a violation of divine law. In 67, 68, Thomas decided he was going to become a priest.
Oh.
But he left that behind when Martin Luther King was shot. He didn't feel the Catholic Church was doing enough to end racism, and he completely abandoned that idea of being in the priesthood. But he did go to the College of the Holy Cross, which he called his only hope. He got a full scholarship because they wanted to be able to say, oh, look, aren't we integrated? And he was one of very, very, very few black students. This is in Massachusetts. He was active in the Black Student Union, and you have not lived fully until you've seen pictures of Clarence Thomas dressed up like a Black Panther. It's fascinating. Yes, it's just fascinating. He was a determined, diligent student, kind of a drag, stuck to a routine. He stayed at the school in holidays. He didn't go home, and this sadness, this neglect, right? He didn't talk much in class, which, I can fully relate to that. His professors were interviewed later about him and said you wouldn't have noticed him. But he was very outspoken in politics with the Black Student Union. He had a fierce determination. He was going to get as much as he could possibly get from the system, from the man, from the white, power structure, and go as far as he could ultimately. So he was vocal student activist associated with Black separatists. He was involved with the Black Muslim movement, which is fascinating. This guy from and the Black Power movement. He had a poster of Malcolm X in his dorm room. He organized a campus walkout against the Black students getting harsher punishment than the white students, which was a thing at the time. He joined anti-war marches, and he was at Harvard when there were violent riots involved with all this anti-war stuff in 1970. And he claimed that this disillusioned him with the left, and so he became conservative. I would argue that if he was raised the way he was, Roman Catholic, and he had a good solid foundation, of conservatism. He was number 9 in his graduating class. He went to Yale Law School, but he really struggled to connect with the students. You get a picture of somebody who's just not Mr. Sociability. He doesn't have a certain ease, with people. Guess who one of his fellow students was in his Yale law class? This is rich. Hillary Clinton.
Really?
Yeah. He graduated in 1974, and then he had an almost impossible time getting a job with a law firm because he was black. And he blamed affirmative action for it, which I don't know. I still can't figure that one out. I don't know.
Yeah.
They said that his Yale degree wasn't valued, and he thought it was worth nothing, and he started to have all this resentment. But he got offered a job, and he interned for them, and then he said no, he didn't want the job. And in 74 to 77, he got a job in Missouri with the Attorney General in Missouri. And he said it was the best job he ever had. He took the bar in Missouri, and he was still broke. He had to sell blood to survive.
Oh my God.
I know. There's just so much. I mean, I hate to go so much into his background, but every time, I mean, it's just unbelievable.
It makes sense about the way he is.
Yeah. It's like he's dead behind the eyes. And now we're learning why.
It sounds like Thomas knows the worst from both black and white sides of life and became a chameleon.
Yeah, exactly. And he was used by both sides, which I think is really particularly repellent. Anyway, in 76, he joined Monsanto, the company, and anyway, he got sick of it. He went back and forth. He became a Republican. He caught the eye of the Reagan administration because he was a black conservative. They needed one of those. Check. And he got a job in the Department of Education. I won't go into all these stupid details. George Bush, H.W. Bush, made him a federal judge to replace Robert Bork. Remember him?
Yes.
And he got a lot of opposition from the National Organization of Women and from the Alliance for Justice. Thomas said that while he was meeting Democratic staffers, he was struck by how easy it had become for sanctimonious white people to accuse a black man of not caring about civil rights. So he has this redwood forest on his shoulder about a lot of things, some justified, some not. He was confirmed, and then eventually, of course, the whole Supreme Court nomination. His nomination was in 1990. He was nominated more than once. He was nominated in 1990 to replace Brenner. And then Souter and then he was again nominated in 91, and he was opposed by all kinds of liberal groups, women's groups, NARAL. They feared that he would end Roe v. Wade. So this is 91. They already knew. And let's see. He was opposed by the NAACP.
He was opposed by them?
Opposed by them, yes.
Oh.
The American Bar Association rates nominees for their acuity with the law, and he got a qualified, which is like a C. It's not. You can get highly qualified or not qualified. So he got.
I didn't know there were ratings like that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. And his ranking was considered very controversial at the time. So the hearings to put him on the Supreme Court took 25 hours. And they were almost done, and they started over. It was bad. There were disagreements with him about natural law versus the Constitution. So he was already anti-constitutional going in as a nominee, and he didn't have common sense to not talk about that. But then when they were almost ready to confirm him, Anita Hill shows up and says, wait a minute, I have a story to tell. She talked about sexual harassment, and the hearings got extremely heated. Hill wanted to keep her allegations anonymous. She did not want to make it the three-ring circus that it became. And a female judge corroborated her allegations. I don't know if she also had, yeah,
Not
yeah,
know that.
yeah.
That would, wow.
Thomas warned her that he'd ruin her career if she spoke. And she said later, I sensed that my discomfort urged him on, that he liked to watch her squirm by publicly humiliating her sexually. That was definitely a thing. The FBI said it was all unfounded, too much he said, she said. Thomas denied it all. He compared it to a lynching, so we've got these hot button terms being tossed around. Hill's testimony was quite graphic, especially for the time. Nowadays, it's just another Tuesday, right? Thomas calling it a lynching, her talking about pubic hair. I mean, the whole thing was just awful. And Hill was the only one who gave public testimony.
Yep.
Other women complained about him, made similar or worse allegations, and they were not allowed to speak. They took their written testimony, they wouldn't let them speak. And she says, if you were young, black, and female, and reasonably attractive, you knew full well that you were being inspected by Thomas and auditioned as a female if you applied for a job in his office.
Sure. Like Trump does. Yeah.
And Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Allegedly. The testimony in his support happened. You know, there were people who were happy to come up and say, oh, I never heard him say an offensive thing to me. Well, you know, maybe you weren't his type. I'm sorry I said it. So anyway, they forced her to take a polygraph. Did you know that?
I thought they did.
She passed. She passed it, yeah. So then Thomas's former boss released a statement and said that persons suffering a delusional disorder might pass a polygraph, referring to Anita Hill. So he was sworn in, and he aligned with the originalist Scalia 92% of the time for the first 13 years, but he became even more reactionary of an originalist. That is, when they interpret the Constitution, they pretend that they're living in 1776 with no frame of reference to modern time.
Correct.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, he alienated himself from most of the judges because he was so supremely conservative. He was okay with overruling precedent, which is not a done thing until lately. He did not believe in what's called stare decisis, which is a Latin phrase. It means let things stay the way they've been decided. In other words, if the Supreme Court rules on something, then further cases that come up that involve these topics will refer to that ruling, right, and they'll go along with the earlier decision rather than overturn everything all the time. He was very, very big with Trump. He appointed many of his former clerks, and they were considered too political for the positions that they were given because of the influence, you know, turning the justice's office into a political arm of the government. And these pro-Trump political people around him became really influential on the Supreme Court decision-making process. He was willing to oppose established precedent. He wrote more than 250 opinions challenging precedent. This is unheard of, right?
Right.
Broad interpretation of executive power. Keep that in mind for this decision that they're going to be coming up with here about how much should the president be allowed to get away with, right? As we know, Thomas is fine with that. Everything to the advantage of the president. Let me go through this more quickly. He opposed things like asylum. Asylum seekers have always been embraced. You know, the whole immigrant thing. You're supposed, until recently, you could come across the border without any kind of documentation, claim asylum and stay until it was processed.
Correct.
And they recorded the fact that you were here, but it was more like getting it documented that you were in here and were working on it, more like a traffic ticket or a parking ticket. Now it's just this crime of the century, to cross the border.
Yep.
There's all. He was very pro free speech, as long as it was his kind of speech. He supports the Second Amendment. His decisions favor law enforcement over anybody when it comes to Fourth Amendment rights like seizure and searches and surveillance and that kind of thing. He's okay with warrantless searches, thermal imaging without a warrant, strip searches for high school students.
What?
He says, yeah, schools are what's called in loco parentis. They're in the place of the parent while the kid is in school. So if the school gives permission, the student can be strip searched and the parents have nothing to do, nothing to say. He fought against providing defense attorneys, to represent indigent defendants. Mm-hmm. He opposed limiting the death penalty. There's this list of things that he was against and for that it just sounds like all the different reasons why somebody should go straight to hell. No, yeah, in my humble opinion. He says the Constitution is colorblind, that laws should be race neutral because discrimination is not a serious problem in the United States.
Yeah, I don't get that at all.
This is what Thomas said. This is a quote. He says, the Constitution says nothing about abortion and the history of laws. Because the Constitution says nothing, but the history that we have has always prohibited, which is not true. During colonial times, that wasn't the case. As these Christian activists got their tendrils in, it became more and more of an issue. It really wasn't even a hot topic until the moral majority in the mid-70s. They needed something to cling to and rally people around emotionally. Yeah. That's when it became a thing, but we're not talking about that right now. Let me see. He advocates ending marriage equality, LGBTQ rights. Mm-hmm. He's ending fully 100% contraception, and even has discussed possibly ending what's called mixed marriages. Hello, let me just remind him of somebody, Ginny, his wife. It's just puzzling, right? He's against Obergefell. That's the case that allowed for gay marriage equality. Mm-hmm. He was all about Roman Catholic hospitals denying women hysterectomies, not doing vasectomies on men because that was their religious right. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get through this. Okay, he married Ginny in 1987. She was a lobbyist and a consultant for the Heritage Foundation. Went to law school, failed the bar, never got her bar license. But she was a big shot in the Tea Party. And he should have recused himself. This is the Civil Liberties Union. I mean, there's a list of organizations who over time have said this guy needs to recuse himself in this case, in this case, in this case, for all these different things. And I've only told you, I glossed over it a little bit. So she's been heavily involved with Trump and January 6th. Her best friend, she claims, was Eastman, who's been indicted again and again and again. The lawyer who created the process of the fake, allegedly, the fake electors. Yeah. He returned to the Catholic Church in the mid-90s. Allegations popped up again in 2016 about groping in 1999. And then there's his relationship with Harlan Crow, the billionaire. Harlan Crow, the billionaire collector of Nazi memorabilia, who has a statue garden in his backyard of all the world's famous dictators. Did you know that?
Oh, I did not know
Oh,
that.
God. This just gets better and better and better. Okay,
Like
so
it's like a spy movie in a way.
I feel like getting in touch with Harlan Crow because I recently had a birthday and I want something. Wait till you hear the gifts he gave to Thomas. A $19,000 Bible, a $15,000 bust of Abraham Lincoln. He gave Yale University $105,000 to pay as a donation to pay for Thomas sitting for a portrait to be hung in Yale. He called it the Justice Thomas Portrait Fund.
Okay.
He's received $500,000 from Crow that went to the Tea Party through Ginny. You know,
Okay.
He's never reported her income in his, well, for the last 10 years has not reported her income in his disclosures every year to the court. It goes on and on. $686,000+ that she got from the Heritage Foundation, not mentioned. He said it was inadvertently omitted. Oh, that, more than $500,000. I forgot. Because this'll give you confidence in his decision-making ability. He didn't report it because he misunderstood the instructions. Oh my God.
Oh my Lord.
So ProPublica reported on, the private jets, the cruises, the private resorts, his
RV.
time, pardon?
Bohemian RV. Yeah.
Bohemian Grove, which is a questionable little boys club for the ultra elite rich that is really an odd thing. At the end of it, they burn in effigy compassion, care. They seriously. Also private school for his great nephew that he takes care of. Washington Post said that Leonard Leo had Kellyanne Conway's polling firm give Ginny Thomas's firm a total of $80,000 and told Kellyanne, don't mention it to Ginny. And then, so the question is, what's going on here? Why is that? Leonard Leo, famously of Opus Dei, famously of the over $1 billion gift from the anonymous donor who is pulling the Federalist Society strings. Ginny's company filed a brief to the Supreme Court on a voting rights case. Apparently that was okay. He had an almost $500,000 RV that was paid for by a United Healthcare executive, came on loan and then forgave the loan. And then I did look up Harlan Crow and stuff. I don't know how much you want to go into that. I looked up Ginny also, and I got but yeah. You're welcome. It's horrifying. Are you blown away? I was blown away. I couldn't believe it.
Yep, it's amazing. Jo says all the Thomas Hill hearings at the same time. I was going through EEOC charges for sex and age discrimination at my place of employment in a red state. That was the way things were. Absolutely. There's so many inadequacies and so many hypocrisy, so much hypocrisy that it's unbelievable that was going on at the same time. So my first thought when you started in the very beginning was that he embodies the idea that people used to talk about in the 70s, which is, and it's not my opinion on race. I want everybody to understand that this is just.
No, we're talking about history.
About history, was that he was a token.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would say, oh, that's your token black or your token woman or your token. Yeah. And that the reason that he could move between the two in such a way was because he reminds me of what Tim Scott is right now. He's the same energy.
Yeah.
Maybe not exactly. I
know what you're saying.
Yeah.
And Amy Coney Barrett, she, people will point to her and say, well, look, here she is, one of these white Christian crazy people, allegedly.
Right.
And she's a woman, but they let her be a big shot lawyer. Well, that's because she's the exception they can point to and say, well, look we let our women go to school, and she's really, really, really smart, super, super smart. We're going, oh yeah, we're going to do her later, next time or whatever. And she's extremely smart. It's not that these people in a vacuum would not necessarily be appropriate for the job. It's their political corruption, allegedly. I should just get a tattoo that says allegedly.
Yep. And Lori, you're absolutely right. The Uneeda Hill hearings were one of Joe Biden's greatest regrets. I agree.
Yeah.
Because he was on those committees. So
wouldn't let her continue her. Yeah.
What she was saying. But, you have to think about the time period. There was, this is Joe Biden also said that all student loans were supposed to go into regular banks and away from the government. And, and he's totally changed his whole position on something like that. So I know things change over time, but it doesn't sound like things changed at all for Clarence Thomas, that he's only gotten worse and worse and worse.
Well, there's a difference between evolving and as your frame of reference and your wisdom with experience changes your opinion, and you come out and say, look, I screwed that up 20 years ago, and now I understand this. That's different from speaking out of both sides of your mouth all the time. Totally different. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very true. What a blaming affirmative action. Oh, my God. You just don't get what the whole idea was, what it was for, I think
you're looking at somebody who was traumatized by the racism against him legitimately. I would never negate that. He had a horrible experience. He was belittled and everything was an uphill battle. And rather than blame the power structure, the white racist power structure, he blamed the attempts of some people to try to ameliorate that damage. It's crazy, yeah.
But when you're burning compassion and you're burning, kindness and compassion and understanding sort of in effigy, then you've totally lost your humanity. And that's what it sounds like. It's like the almighty buck and, living just for ego.
Well, here's an example. He talked about how he loved to get into this RV and travel around America and vacation with the real Americans, rub elbows with the hoi polloi, But meanwhile, he's on $500,000 vacations with Harlan Crow.
Right.
When's the last time Harlan Crow invited you to go, to Italy?
Isn't there a picture of him sitting with a lot of elites, like in the backyard?
That's Bohemian Grove. Well, maybe that's another one, but yeah, there are pictures of him hanging with the cigar smokers at Bohemian Grove. Yeah. And I agree with you, Joe. This is a conversation I have with my adult children who are very progressive and very socially aware, and they're disgusted with everything that's going on and disappointed by some of the decisions that Biden has made. And I've told them to keep your perspective. If you think that your decision is Trump, no thank you, or Biden, well, I'm not happy with him, so I'm going to go with a third party. Any vote that doesn't go to Biden elects Trump. Because if you stay home, it'll help Trump. If you vote for a third-party candidate, it splits the electoral votes, and then the decision goes to the House of Representatives.
Right. Yep. So I know that I've talked to Helen about Project 2025, and she's done a video, or maybe more than one video.
Yeah, I have.
Maybe we should bring it back and just chat about it at some point.
Well, I would be more than happy to do that, and stay tuned because I have a guest coming here in a couple of weeks who is an expert. She was raised a white Christian nationalist, and she has been dissecting Project 2025 from that understanding and telling everybody why this is going to be so horrible, how life is going to change as we know it, no matter who you are. You don't have to be an ethnic minority or gay or a woman. Everything will change if they get their way. She understands their coded wording, that kind of thing. If you want to hear her talk, her name is Andra Watkins, and she just did an interview on Rick Wilson's podcast, The Enemies List. That's where I heard her. And I got in touch with her and I said, please, I know I'm just your Irish granny, but please. Turns out she's into Reiki, and she's like, okay. You never know. People are much more cool than you would think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Oh, wow. Yeah, I knew he was vile, but I had no idea just how vile this man really was, or is, rather. And I guess he didn't have too much to say. He only asked 3 questions at this hearing the other day. He was kind of sitting back. Do you get the feeling that Roberts is just like, I know Roberts has his own issues with things he's done and, probably a little bit too much corruption. But do you get the feeling that they're hanging this over his head, that they're saying, you can't change the way we're going to do things, and you just better shut up?
There's a definite power imbalance, and he has no authority, and they really don't care what he has to say because they're taking their marching orders from elsewhere.
Right.
And they're completely politicized. And the thing about Thomas is he has a reputation already for a very long time for just not saying anything. It's like they put somebody who was a mute on the court. He just had nothing to say about anything. And it's a very cynical sort of presence. Like he's there, but he's not there. He's there in name only.
Token idea that you're the token man that's of color, and you're here on the court, so we can say we did what we did. But
there he is. Yeah.
I get
it's
it.
Really disturbing, really cynical, really distressing that these people that in the background, these rich white Christian nationalist men, have managed, and it didn't happen overnight. This has been going on for a very long time, since the Powell memo, or before. Well, during World War II, they were already at it. What's happening today? Read my thing of Rachel Maddow's book.
Right, I'm reading that now.
Yeah. Prequel, yeah. We're reliving what happened. We are.
Those cycles came back. So. Let's do a couple of readings, a couple of throws on the Supreme Court in general. I don't even know why they brought this to the Supreme Court. I mean, I know he wanted it brought to the Supreme Court. It should have been thrown back at the lower level, their decision at the lower level. It seems like the judges we have in that district, are they district courts or they're much more intelligent.
Yeah. The appeals court adjudicated that no, the president doesn't have endless power. Right. And then they appealed to the higher court, and at that point it would have been appropriate for the Supreme Court to throw it back down to the appeals court and just say, no, we're not getting involved in this. That's ridiculous.
Right.
It's my impression, this is just my opinion for entertainment, that they have been intentionally positioned because their decisions have been orchestrated, and it has been understood that the opportunity for them to make a judgment on this was manipulated, created, and pushed forward so they could give him permission for the inevitable destruction of democracy, that this is all part of a plan. Project 2025. I hate to harp.
I know. And we should talk about it again. So this is the weirdo, and so I'm just going to say that's the former guy, and they're taking the marching orders from the weirdo. We have someone that's not in government governing at the backstreet level, and we know that. He's telling people, he's not elected official, and yet he's telling everybody what to do. And they're at home with that decision. They like that decision. They don't care that he's not the real president.
Well, and I think it could also just as easily be the gentleman whom we were discussing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But This plane is, I'm guessing this plane is about to crash. I'm hoping so.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Let me look at the next card I have. Oh, yes, because look, I had the house, and then after the airplane, I got house is under construction. So this, and hopefully that's not their house under construction. Their plans that they have made to put a new,
Like the White House, you mean?
or the government, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
Project 2025. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I just pulled a few cards
Okay.
from the Pulp Tarot, which this really irritated somebody who's always writing comments about how awful this is. This is my exclusively for Republican, corrupt, and criminal people.
Oh,
Okay. I don't want to taint. The cards, right? So I got an interesting combo here for the first two cards, and I'm going to be cautious about what I say. But we get the Emperor. Imagine who that might be.
Mm-hmm.
And the Empress, who, okay, I always get, everything's backwards. I always get the Empress for a certain country called Mother, and pulling the strings is the sense that I get behind him. And something for him to be gained, the power, the money, the position, the adulation and attention, because there are people who do like what he's done. And he's stuck in this position now. He's owing, he has a lot to owe to a lot of very powerful people. He's got a choice to make. And I didn't draw another card because I want to be able to sleep tonight.
I understand. No, totally understand. Will stricter, more fairer rules be installed as so there can never be a GQP type of manipulation to appoint other governmental officials? Oh, yeah, we can do a read on that.
Well, there's a lot of discussion about having a new constitutional convention.
Oh, I didn't
jumping off from the Constitution we have, not to get rid of it, but tweaking it to prevent this kind of thing. Yeah.
Updating it. Yeah. Well, that's what amendments are, too, right? I mean,
yeah, but there are some inherent flaws, some things that were never mentioned. And, well, for example, where's the ERA?
Yeah.
All men are created equal. And then they allowed the within one of the amendments, I think it might have been the 14th Amendment, they allowed the Fugitive Slave Act,
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not without flaws, but
sure.
We have to keep. Yeah.
Well, look at this. They got blood on their hands.
Oh my God. And
then I get the wizard. So they're going to bring in somebody that will be able to figure it all out. And I'm thinking to myself, immediately I see, of course, nobody will like it, but I see somebody like Ludwig with, what's his name from, so Judge Ludwig, the conservative guy, plus the guy, Lawrence Tribe. I see it like that.
Oh, yeah, kind of like two points of view. Yeah.
Two opposites, but understanding that they're both constitutionalists, so they're going to want to preserve.
Yeah, their loyalty is to democracy.
Correct.
And we're not seeing that right now. Right.
Well, it says, and they will hatch an idea. It looks like. Because they got the A.
I like that. Well, I got the Five of Pentacles, which is sort of an obvious kind of commentary on where we are right now. I think it's these pictures, look at the woman with the baby.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yep.
The Queen of Wands. This is interesting because this is about leadership that is intuitive and has an element of that feminine energy. And I think it's in opposition to the King of Wands, which is an autocratic, patriarchal, horrible. That's
Harris?
Pardon me?
Could it be Kamala Harris?
That's the thing, or maybe a collective female energy. I Oh, look at this. The Page of Wands. I think female voters, women voters are going to be
We are. We're pissed.
paradigm shifting. Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
pissed. And when we're pissed, we always unite. I even said to somebody when we were talking about it that I would go out and protest if I
Didn't you just get the wizard?
Yes. Yeah,
There we
you
go.
There we
Yeah.
go. Wow.
Even you would go out and protest?
I would.
Well, I'd think about it if there were a nearby porta potty that wasn't too gross.
You have to have that.
I give that. You get old enough, you got to take these things into consideration.
But I believe I would have to take a stand, and I would do that if they say that he has immunity. I would do that. Yeah, I would do that. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I worry.
Yeah, I know. I don't see that they will.
Should we read on it?
Oh, you can. Sure.
Are you willing to?
Remember, this is the energy of right now, Helen.
Yeah, I do know that. And I believe, I don't know, not everyone believes the same thing, but I believe that we live kind of in a soup of all possibilities, past, present, and future. And so, depending on who you are and how you tune in, how your battery's working that day, you might tune into something that's an option, but not a given.
That's true. It's one of the many timelines that could exist.
That's another way to look at it, right? And but people don't want to hear bad stuff.
Well, I've got here that devotees, and I'm thinking Supreme Court, the devotees of you know who are going to be put through a maze, and they don't know which way to go. See, they can't find the way out. They can't find their way out, but they'll be bumped to the moon. They're going to be to the moon, Alice.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Well, presented with logic and the way the law is supposed to work might be a little too much,
Might be.
Okay, let's see what I got here. Oh, well, this is going to be very contentious. This is really going to be contentious, which I feel like that doesn't bode well. But the other way to look at it is, no matter what the decision is, it's going to be contentious. The Five of Cups, which is, sorrow and suffering, and I feel like the Eeyore of tarot here. But here we go, the Wheel of Fortune. Wow. This is significant. This is often about good luck. Yep. So I guess it depends on who's interpreting the card. But I think it's a little bit of a message too that we're all part of a larger cycle, we tend to get in the weeds and focus on the weeds. I had an interesting conversation yesterday with Gertrude Sue.
Yes.
And that was a large part of our conversation was my inclination to get in the weeds and her inclination to remove herself completely. And where do you find that balance? Yeah.
Wonderful.
It's interesting. Wow. Yeah.
It is interesting. Yeah. So watch your focus and maintain the ability to go through the maze without expectation, I guess. And that's hard to do for us because we'd like to know.
It's really hard. Yeah. And, we're supposed to be, what's the Buddhist detachment? Yeah, detachment. I'm really attached. It's bad. Joe, this is what I try to tell myself. I don't think we need to read the cards about this. I think it's a situation where it's one of the laws of nature, one of the laws of the universe, the law of rhythm. As far as everything goes in one direction, the speed and distance it goes, it'll return the opposite way, the same speed and distance. This is all part of a larger cycle, the Wheel of Fortune. And we're just where we are, enjoy the show, kind of, I guess,
It's just exactly like the idea of the German word Zeitgeist, which is the spirit of the age, but we never know what the spirit of the age is until we are in the future and look back at it. You can't get too deep in. Yeah. Which
is why history is so important. We need to know history because human behavior really doesn't change. We just keep repeating the same mistakes.
Absolutely. Well, we're a little over an hour, so I'm going to say thank you to everybody for coming and joining Helen and I today. Thank you, of course, Helen.
Oh,
for
thank
your
you.
wisdom and your information. It does bring more awareness to me of some of the things that he's done that I was not aware of, and I
Oh, it's
need to be aware
awful.
of. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
bad. But
You know in your gut you don't like them, but it's great to have a few
now you know
facts to
why.
back it up.
Now you know why. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. All
No,
right.
I want to thank you. I really appreciate it. I always love getting together with you. And somehow, it's always a struggle to find the time for both of us, right?
Oh, Laura, she's got to go wash off her fury. I understand. We're gonna do it too.
I've heard bleach can be very effective
That's true. Don't inject it though.
as a cleaning agent.
I get it. Thank you, everybody. You have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
day.
Yes, thank you for
You
watching,
amen.
everybody.
Bye-bye.